everyone is talking about recessions.
Recession.
US recession.
A recession.
A recession.
So I was not surprised when I got an email from a news organization asking if I could come on and explain how we know when we're in a recession. It seemed like a good opportunity, but this was an organization with millions of followers. If I messed this up, I could turn bad information into a core memory for thousands of people. Messing up wouldn't just make me look stupid. I could literally make other people stupider with my bad takes. So I needed to know, what is a recession? As I looked into this, the first thing I realized is that 95% of people have the wrong idea about what a recession is. I had a definition in my head, but to be certain, I went and grabbed my very first economics textbook. It said periods of declining real output are referred to as recessions. So that's consistent with the definition I had in my head, but there was a key detail that I was looking for that's not in there. So I went and grabbed another textbook. This one said, recession, a period of declining real incomes and rising unemployment. I actually like that definition more because it at least mentions rising unemployment, but it was still missing the thing that I had in my head. So I had to go to the source. There is an official organization that defines when we're in a recession. It's called the National Bureau of Economic Research, or NBER. I'll let you in on a secret. There's no real reason why this is the organization that gets to define recessions. It's kind of like how we have a tire company that decides what the good restaurants are. They started doing it a long time ago, and today that's who everyone listens to. I went on their frequently asked questions, where the second question is, what is a recession? The NBER's traditional definition of a recession is that it is a significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and that lasts more than a few months. I'm happy with all of these definitions, but they're all missing this thing, this fact that has been in my head for at least a decade. But then, I saw it further down on the page. The financial press often states the definition of a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP. Why doesn't the committee accept the 2-quarter definition? Wait, the financial press? The 2-quarter rule isn't even from economists?
There's been this ongoing debate. You got to get out Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Okay, so we're going to define recession for you.
I think if you ask just about anybody who's familiar with economic indicators, what is a recession, they would cite this 2-quarter rule. 2 consecutive quarters of declining real GDP. Which leads me to the first lesson I learned preparing for this interview. Don't use the 2 quarters rule when defining a recession. Is it a strong predictor? Yes, but it is not how we define it. And the NBER gives examples of when the 2-quarter rule fails. We're going to cover one of those failures in this video, and I'll even give you a hint. You lived through it. So naturally the question is, if a recession is not defined by the 2 quarters rule, how does the NBER know when we're in a recession? I reviewed decades of announcements from the NBER to see how they measure recessions, and I found they consistently reported 4 macroeconomic indicators. First, one of our biggest concerns are whether people are working. When people lose their jobs, they lose income, they have to get tighter with their money, we don't produce as much, and a recession is practically guaranteed. That's why in tough economic times, the monthly unemployment numbers are nearly always front page news. And that's why the first indicator that the NBER looks at is employment. Next, since recessions are a decline in output, we should be concerned about whether we're making stuff. Are we making consumer goods or business equipment? How are mining and utilities doing? All of this is summarized in data called the Industrial Production Index, which is the second indicator that the NBER uses. But it doesn't help when we're making stuff and no one buys it. In fact, a recession often happens when we're making more stuff than people will buy. That's why the third indicator that the NBER looks at is real manufacturing sales. Finally, people can't buy stuff if they don't have money. And even if they are making money, if the purchasing power of that money is going down, that's a sign that we're in an economic decline. So the fourth indicator that the NBER is looking at is real incomes. But isn't this all just summarized by GDP? If GDP goes down, people lose their jobs, we stop making stuff, people stop buying stuff, and we have lower incomes. Why not use the 2 quarters rule as a single indicator to let us know when we're in a recession. There's one really important reason, and it's the same reason this video looks so bad. GDP data are reported by the Bureau of Economic Analysis in January, April, July, and October. But those are just the preliminary estimates. The BEA updates these estimates 2 more times as the data become clearer. If we follow the 2 quarters rule, that means in a 6-month span, we only have 2 fuzzy data points describing our economy, and we don't even have the full picture until 3 months later. The 4 indicators that the NBER tracks, on the other hand, are updated every month. With those, in the same 6 months, we can get 24 data points describing what our economy looks like. GDP growth rates compress too much information over too long of a time frame. We can get a higher resolution image by looking at more data at a higher frequency. And it's easy to see the difference this makes when we look at our last prolonged recession. The end of 2007 saw some trouble with the housing market, and in the first quarter of 2008, we saw GDP contract. But in the second quarter, GDP grew. We, quote, avoided a recession. Then GDP contracted in the third quarter of 2008. But that was not 2 consecutive quarters. So according to this rule, it wasn't a recession. Finally, in the fourth quarter of 2008, GDP contracted again, giving us 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. But remember, there's a reporting delay, so it wasn't even until 2009 that we knew this. On the other hand, these other indicators gave a monthly update that the economy was in a free fall. Okay, but we still haven't answered what is a recession. First, it's when these 4 indicators decline or stagnate. And this is something that you can check out for yourself. I'll leave a link to the most recent data in the description below, right next to that subscribe button, and you can look for yourself. But other than that, there is no formal definition on how big or how long a decline lasts. The NBER is kind of just eyeballing it. How did the interview go? Well, I got them to focus on the other indicators, so I'm pretty happy, and I don't think I looked stupid. Now, as much as I would like to think that you're interested in this question because you're just super passionate about macroeconomic data, you're probably more interested in how a recession would affect you personally. That's why you need to watch this video about how recessions affect different majors. It could change your career.